to one of William the Conqueror's nieces, or great nieces. And so that's what happened. And so basically, King David, well, he became King David I of Scotland because his elder brothers either died or became priests, and because it was Catholic, they couldn't marry, etc. And so, although he was the fifth son, he became the king of Scotland. And but prior to that, he had been living down in Northamptonshire with the Countess, and he became the Earl of Northampton. And the Oliphants had lands on those estates, and they had estates of their own in this vast landholding that the Countess of Northamptonshire had. Then there was a civil war in England, and King David of Scotland sided with Matilda, fighting against Stephen. And cut a long story short, there was a battle at Winchester in 1141, and David Oliphant was fighting on the wrong side, and saw that that his godfather, David I of Scotland's army were losing, and David I could have lost his life in the slaughter that would have ensued. And so David Oliphant changed sides from the winning side to the losing side at the very last minute in the battle, and saved King David I of Scotland's life, and had to come up to Scotland. The English were so furious with David Oliphant that they put a monastery on his lands so that he could never return to them. But he was then given land. He was also made justiciar of the southern half of Scotland, which was effectively meant that he ran the southern half of Scotland. So it was an immensely powerful position. The most powerful position possible in the southern half of Scotland. His son, the first Sir Walter, also was made justiciar of the Lothians after David, and then his son, also Sir Walter, was made justiciar of the Lothians. Now, David was given the lands of Bothwell. He died around about 1170. Then his son, the first Sir Walter, died early on in the 1200s. And the second Walter, and this is where it gets important, the second Walter died around about 1242. And as far as the Scottish records are concerned, they've been very telescopic in their vision. And they've just looked at Walter, and the second Sir Walter died in 1242. Therefore, logically, his son-in-law, they'd assumed it was his son-in-law, Walter de Murray, was the one who inherited in 1242 and therefore built Bothwell Castle. If, however, and this is recorded in the English records, if you look at the English records, you will see that after Walter, his heir was another Sir David Oliphant, and that he inherited all the lands in England, and he would therefore have inherited all the lands in Scotland as well. The point being that he didn't die until about 1252. And then if you look at the records regarding the Murrays and Bothwell, they don't actually start giving money to the church to pray for the souls of the previous owners until 1253, which kind of indicates that they didn't actually move in until 1252 or 1253. Moreover, they asked for the soul of the last one, the last Sir David Oliphant, to be prayed for, not Sir Walter. Now, if they had inherited from Sir Walter, what are they doing wanting to pray for the soul of Sir David and not Sir Walter? It makes no sense at all. So basically, what it means is that we have a very convincing argument that the Murrays did not get their hands on Bothwell until about 1252. The trouble is, we're talking about a very narrow margin of time, because what happened was that there are three castles that are quite similar to Bothwell. There's one called de Courcy in France, and then there's Kildrummie and something else. What is the other one called? Anyway, it doesn't matter. There are two in Scotland. One in the Lothians, and it's a small little thing, but it's similar to Bothwell in that the keep, the main part of the castle, is round. It's French in style. It's a donjon or dungeon, which basically means a round keep. And de Courcy has one, Bothwell has one, Kildrummie has one, and whatever the other place is called has one as well. Kildrummie is way up north in Scotland, and I take the view that you have the ripple effect, like on a pond. You throw a stone into a pond, the ripples go out from the epicenter. And so culturally, I don't believe that the one in the north of Scotland would have been built before Bothwell, just as the one on the east side of Scotland, Dalkeith, I think it's called Dalkeith, it is a tiny version of Bothwell. And I don't believe that was started first by some unimportant family that only controlled their own lands and nothing else. There is an author who has said that he believes that the artisans who had the skills and the knowledge for building de Courcy must have come over to Scotland and built Bothwell. The point being that the daughter of the builder of de Courcy Castle was a lady who became the Queen of Scotland. She married Alexander III, and her name was Marie de Courcy. And it makes no sense for Bothwell to have been built long after, after 1252, because the king and her husband died in 1249. Sorry, is this too many dates and too many facts? My apologies if it is. Are you asleep or are you still with me? Straight at the end. It doesn't matter. The point is, have you got a copy of the book?
Yeah, oh yes.
Okay. The point is that this whole week is supposed to be blitzing you with Oliphant information such that you will not be able to absorb it all. You're not supposed to absorb it, okay? But you've got the book, which will repeat almost everything that I tell you, so that you can gen up on it at home, you can digest it, recover. You will be exhausted this week. You will be exhausted, trust me. But at the end of it all, you'll go home and you'll be able to read through the book and you'll be able to say, right, now I get what he was talking about. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now, come on in. How are we doing anyway with the data and the projector?
We're struggling to communicate with the projector. We're trying multiple remotes now.
Right. That's the second time today that I haven't been able to communicate properly. Where is she? Oh, yes. Anyway, moving on swiftly. So, I'm having a battle with the authorities over who built Bothwell. It makes no sense whatsoever, given that the king died in 1249, that his wife came from de Courcy in 1239. It makes sense that she did bring the people with the skills to build another de Courcy. And so that means that the window, because she went back to France after her husband had died. She came back to Scotland again because she had a son who became the next king. But it's obvious that it was whoever owned Bothwell in that intervening period between 1239 and 1249 who started building the castle. And even if it was the Murrays, it was they had it by virtue of the wife, who was an Oliphant. But if you look at any of the official sites online, if you look at any official books, they will talk about the aristocratic Murrays who acquired Bothwell and built Bothwell Castle. Well, the Murrays actually are a great Scottish family, and they're a ducal family, and they've got a number of earls, etc. as well. But them inheriting the Bothwell from the Oliphants was a massive step up for them. We got our first peerages in the 1300s, and they got their first one in 1604. And then more in 1606, and then from then on just kept on climbing. So the illusion, the Victorian illusion, by the 1900s or 1800s even, you have this ducal family with cadet branches who are earls. They must have built Bothwell. Rubbish. And so basically what I've done now is I've actually, I've gone through the English records online and culled all the information, and I've put it into a paper which is in your books, and I have presented it to the Historic Environment Scotland, or whatever it's called, HES or HSE, and they were saying, when I was corresponding with them a couple of months ago, that their position has not changed on the matter. And now they are, now that I've produced all this irrefutable evidence, they are saying, it's interesting, and we will carry on looking at it. So they're not convinced, but it's kind of stopped them in their tracks. But if you were able to get into Bothwell and have a look at it, you would see that it says that it was started after 1242 by the Murrays, and we're exploding that. It's just one of the mountains that we're climbing. I have asked them to do radiocarbon dating on the mortar, and they've said that they want to. They would need to identify original mortar as opposed to later mortar, so that they do the radiocarbon dating on the right mortar. They did ask for the funding for it, because it's not just a question of doing the radiocarbon dating. For them, it's also about doing the research and things like that as well. But anyway, they have not been able to get the funding, and the reason why Bothwell is closed is because they have realised that there are a number of sites, including Bothwell, that need maintenance at the very top of the buildings. I mean, sort of high-level mortar or masonry maintenance. And so that is their priority. But now, hopefully, having gathered the evidence from England, and this is the perverse thing, because the records in England state that David Oliphant was the one who inherited from Sir Walter after 1242. So now that they've got this, now that I'm taking away their telescopic vision and showing them the bigger picture, they're going to have to rethink their whole chronology. And that's the kind of work that Richard and I have been doing for years, and try and carry on doing. As I said, I'm going to live forever, so it doesn't really matter. But that there are, we are trying to. I'm trying to duplicate all the information. I've been doing this since my teens, and Cullen and Bob and others. We're trying to pool all our collective knowledge so that it doesn't die with one person. And this is a tragedy. We've had 2 people who have passed away in the last few years, and with them has passed away so much information that it's devastating. One is Zan, unfortunately, who had done so much research. In the year before he died, he said to me that he looks at the websites for I can't remember the people that he worked for. Who was it? Which were the big companies that he worked for? Was it not
Google?
Facebook?
You worked for Google.
Google. And he said he could see the software that he had written still being used in these massive websites. And he was brilliantly clever and just way before his time. For the Oliphants, he was like a Tesla. Basically, he was bombarding me daily with information, and it was there was no way that I even had time to process it. But he's gone, and now all we can do is try and sort of pick up the shreds, try and find things in the ashes. And then Greg Ross died last year as well. He had a brain tumour, and there's a book which you will see at some point called Forgandenny, which is where we are now. Forgandenny, A Place in Time. And when he first wrote it, he did it for private publication, but it was twice as thick as it is now. And he was told to take out half of it. So he said to me, look, Roderick, what I'll do is I'll take out a lot of the stuff on the Oliphants, and so that we can then, at some future date, make a book purely about the Oliphants. He's dead. The book's never been done. His wife says that the information in his computer, he's kind of done a spring clean of his computer whilst he still could before he died, and she said there's nothing there, or very little information there. Maybe we'll find it. Maybe it's on a memory stick or something like that. But he really got involved with researching American Oliphant genealogy. And for me, it is like standing on one leg now, because he asks me questions and I don't know the answers, and I know that he did. This cannot go on. We've got, with technology now, how are we doing?
This isn't waking up. That's the problem.
Isn't it? So it's electrical.
We've got the group building before you have gone off with the remote control to turn the thing on. So there's a guy that's coming in who knows where there's another one. He'll be about 5 minutes or so.
Is there some kind of remote behind my laptop? It's a TV one, I think.
Sign that waiver. Oh, that's it. Great.
Hurrah! Hurrah! Now I can repeat everything that I just told you all over again. With pictures. How are we doing? And where's the aircon?
I wish. People don't believe it.
Tell me, do you know, there's and this is part of the malaise. For those of you that don't know, I am passionately, fanatically pro-independence for Scotland. I get infuriated by so many different things. For instance, there's a company, what's it called? Cineworld. Cineworld have cinemas all over Britain, but they decided that Scotland's cold, so we don't need to put aircon into the Scottish.
Oh, now you're really professional.
Wow.
Stick it in my pocket.
Yep.
Do you know what happens to things that go in my pocket?
We don't want to know in public.
Tasting. It's
Yep, it's running.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay, so this isn't for their benefit, it's for your benefit.
Yes.
Thank you. So this is where everyone around the world can sort of
Yes.
hear me and see me.
It's live and it will save recorded, so we can watch
Thank
it.
you so much for coming in.
It's all right.
Thank you.
It's on Facebook Live. Oliphant Archives.
Right, okay. So now, I guess that's the rehearsal, isn't it? Who's going to have the remote?
That's good.
Okay, right. Is that table in anybody's way? Okay, Callum, you're probably in a few people's way, but you're going to sit down.
Yeah.
Somebody bring that man a chair. Do you want a chair? There's some. Oh, Stephanie. Salamed. Right. This is. I mean, it's a huge portrait. Once we're on this page, while he's setting up, do you see these crescents here? Can you see them?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. You're still awake. Okay. That was the main entrance into the castle. There was a wall from there along here, and there was a wall from there along here. It wasn't straight. It came out to there and then across. But that was the entrance in for a long time. And this is, historians, intellectuals, believing that they know everything and then changing their story after a while. For a long time, they were saying that this part of the castle was never built. But now they reckon it was. So, I do respect professionals. I have to tell myself that every day. I know a lot of you are professionals, so it's really important that I do. Now, Cullen, are you still going to be there, or are you going to be out of Dee Dee's way?
No.
Am I in your way?
Fine.
Okay.
Is he?
It's fine.
Is it all right?
It's okay.
If you can't see, I mean, if anything's obscured, just shout, because
I can't see.
we now you can't. Okay. So, and the doctrine, the important part is that. The rest is just part of the mass. Okay. Can I have the next frame? Frame, as if by magic. I mean, you can see this is not just some little domestic fortified house. Yeah? This is the home of a person who ruled the southern half of Scotland. And in the Oliphant history books, they say that the Oliphants never rose to such heights as they did in their first century in Scotland. This is what we're talking about. And that, by the way, is completely different for every single family that was in Scotland at these times and afterwards. None of them fell the way the Oliphants did. Yes, they became lords, etc., but all the other families, the Douglases, who also inherited this from the Murrays, became a ducal family. The Murrays became a ducal family. So many of the other families from that period either finished up as other people who were justiciars of the Lothians after the Oliphants became marquises, which I don't know whether you know, but the top is the duke, then you get a marquis, then you get an earl, then you get viscount, then you get lord. And the Oliphants' titles were all just lords, so they were the lowest level of aristocracy. But it wasn't always like that. Originally, you only had earls and lords, and to be a lord was a very big thing. But the seniority of titles is such that the older the title is, the more important you are. So if the king had a favourite, he made them a lord or an earl, and there were other 50 earls before who had been created hundreds of years before. They were senior. So the kings introduced new titles that were senior to the old titles, so that their favourites were senior to the old order. And so basically the Oliphants just sort of got eclipsed into oblivion. Right. So the Great Donjon, well, I mean, yes, we need them to do radiocarbon dating for the rest, but certainly for this, which is so like Debussy. Can we go to the next one? It needs power.
Did it unplug?
It slightly, yeah. It'll take, sorry guys, it'll take 5 minutes. It's an old laptop. We didn't have time to transfer the data onto Cullen's laptop, which we need to do later tonight. Please.
We can do that.
Not just my speech, but I've got Bob's, and I've also got another lady. We've got somebody who's ex-president emeritus of the Tour Guides Association and World Tour Guides Association coming to give a talk on Thursday. I mean, she's been very, very successful in her career. Distinguished, that's a word, distinguished. Who's coming? Getting there. Right. Not my screensaver. They just load random things, as you know.
24724.
Thank you. Right. Oh wow, that was quick. Okay. I mean, you can see how big it is, and it used to stretch way out over this way as well. The next one is a recreation. Can you show the next image? I'll get around the way. Okay, well, this is showing it from the interior. And then looking the other way, the dungeon. It doesn't look tall. Right, okay. Until recently, it was thought that the castle was never completed to its original design. That's not true. It's similar to the strongholds of Cousy, Kildrummy, and Dalton. Dalton, thank you. As it has a round keep, or donjon. Okay. It's in ruins. It was 82 feet high and 62 feet in diameter, and the walls were 15 feet thick, such that it had corridors in the walls. Yeah? That's it from inside, and that doesn't give you any real indication of the height of the building, but the next picture will. I mean, it's absolutely massive. I mean, you can see over here, you know, some kind of corridor or doorway leading to a room within the thickness of the walls. Different English kings, etc., tried to destroy the castle, and at some point, rather than rebuild the donjon, they just built a straight across the half of it. So the trouble is, the bigger the fortress, the more of a target it is for invading armies to destroy. Right. And then that gives you a better idea of the size of the donjon. And that's a recreation. You see the gatehouses that I was talking about, and the dungeon over there, and now the wall goes across there somewhere. Richard, can I borrow your stick for this talk? I did bring one of my own. You don't need it with your stick, do you? Bless you. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, let's rattle through this, because I know a lot of you are very tired, and I apologise for that. But because we're going to see this tomorrow, it's just so important to get the message across to you all. Right, okay, so again, another picture of the same thing. That's a plan of it as it is now and as it was before. Bothwell was described by Scottish archaeologist William Douglas Simpson as being one of the most foremost secular structures of medieval Scotland, or Middle Ages in Scotland. I mean, you know, it is a seriously important building. Historic Environment's website for Bothwell says, history, Bothwell Castle is one of medieval Scotland's outstanding monuments. Walter Murray's aristocratic family acquired the land on which Bothwell Castle stands in 1242. That's nonsense. And we can prove it. Right. Either he or his son William, known as the Rich, began the mighty castle in a spectacular display of power. No. It's nonsense. The history of Bothwell has been written and repeated on the basis of Victorian presumptions. And this is something that we have to fight against all the time. The Murrays did not get Bothwell in 1242. They also inherited it through an Oliphant heiress, but that never gets mentioned when they're talking about the aristocratic Murrays. This marriage was the making of the Murrays. It absolutely was. I mean, it was a huge inheritance, and it was a complete game changer for them. Carry on. The Murrays built a vast castle enclosure covering 1.5 acres, or 3/4 of a hectare. Most striking is the donjon main residential tower, one of the greatest stone buildings of medieval Scotland. One of the greatest stone buildings of medieval Scotland. The dungeon was 20 metres in diameter and stood more than 30 metres tall. Partially destroyed in 1337. It was later rebuilt and remains hugely impressive. Okay, those measurements are slightly different from the ones that I told you earlier, but this is taken from a website. So, anyway, the Murray work also included much of the south curtain wall. Stone foundations of the north, to the north of the castle, possibly the base of timber foundations. Why would you put stone foundations in and then put timber on top of it? It makes no sense at all. It was built as a proper castle from the outset. Carry on, please. Keep going. Bothwell started in the 13th century. I mean, basically they're saying in the second half, the authorities say in the second half of the 13th century. It was built, I'm certain, between 1239 and 1249. Carry on. The actual date is unknown, and that's key to the debate, because basically they are saying that it's later, and that again is in the face of what other people say about the other castles in Scotland with their round-century dungeons. The style and design are good indicators. It's similar to the strongholds of Cousy, Kildrummie, and Dalton. That's De Cousy, and I mean this was crazy. I mean, it was about double the height of Bothwell and double the size in every dimension. But the French had the technology; they knew how to do it. The Scots didn't really. So it makes sense that. Okay, next one, please. That's De Cousy now, and the Great Donjon, I think, is at the back. Yeah, there it is again. And please. So, who built it, and why might the design of Bothwell Castle be based upon it? Okay, keep going. The Cousy Castle was built between 1225 and 1245 by Enguerrand III de Cousy. And he had a daughter, Marie, who married Alexander II. I said third, Alexander II of Scotland. Her son was Alexander III. Bothwell would not have been started earlier than 1239 when Marie de Cousy married King Alexander II. If you're going to copy the Queen's home, you do it when she's around to see it. I mean, basically it would have been a form of flattery to have built a castle that was similar to her own childhood home. It would not have been built decades later when neither she nor her husband were alive to see it. I mean, why would you try and do something, why would you be trying to carry favour with somebody who's dead? It's not logical. It was probably Sir David who started when he inherited in 1242. They say that it was started by the Murrays in 1242 when they inherited. I'm sure they're right about the date, but in that particular context, but wrong about the person who was actually the heir. Right, let's keep going. King Alexander, as I said, died in 1249. Marie returned to Picardy in France, where de Coucy is. One author put it, it is extremely probable that the architect of Bothwell Castle and quite a guild of craftsmen may have come over in Mary's train and worked for years in the building of this castle. It makes logical sense. Okay, keep going, please. That's Doulton Castle with its dungeon. Doulton, they say, was started in 1240, and that's another picture of the Coucy. So, I mean, basically, why would somebody who had no great standing in Scotland, far away, I mean, in a small part of the Lothians, be building a castle in 1240 when Bothwell wasn't being built? Surely it would have been a copy, I mean, a scaled-down version of Bothwell. Right, which is pretty much what I've said. Kildrummy was thought to have been started in 1250, but again, nobody knows. There's no science and no radiocarbon dating on any of these buildings to say when it was built. But you can see the similarities. You've got the big great donjon at one end, and then a long flank with a precipice, and the main entrance over there, and a slightly skew. It's not straight wall on that side, but in fact it's mirrored on that side as well. Whereas it's straighter at Bothwell on that side. Okay, let's keep going. And there is Kildrummy in a
miniature.
That would be a good idea to get that done with Bothwell one of these days. Just to go through the different Oliphants who were justiciars of the Lothians. David Oliphant, who was the first of the family to come to Scotland in 1141. He was born between 1113 and 1117 and died at circa 1170. How do we know that he was born between 1113 and 1117? Again, it was Zan who figured it out. And it was on the basis of the fact that it couldn't be before 1113 because that is when David I of Scotland married William the Conqueror's great niece, and beyond 1117 would have been too young to have got the lands which he then got, when he saved the King of Scotland's life and had to run to Scotland. The chronology would not have fitted for him to own those lands if he'd been born any later than 1117. Anyway, carry on. Sir Walter, his son. By the way, Sir Walter married, we're in Strathern right now, and before the days of earls and lords, you had mini kings who were called moormares, and Strathmore is Strathern was an ancient moormareship, and Sir Walter married the daughter of the moormare of Strathern and got lands at Aberdagie, well, Strabeath first, and then Aberdagie, in Scotland, for Aberdagie, around about 1183. And a junior branch of the family then took up residence up here, far away from the Lothians. The Lothians is Scotland south of the Firth of Forth and the River Clyde. So Firth of Forth is on the or River Forth is on near Edinburgh, and the Clyde is where Glasgow is. So that east-west line. Everything north was called Scotia, and everywhere south of it was called Lordonia. So they were all three justiciars of the Lothians. But then I also found Sir William, who was also a justiciar of the Lothians, but he was not the heir to Sir Walter. David was. And he was signing charters, etc., and must have died around about 1252. So, there's very little doubt that the Oliphants owned Bothwell until about 1252. Down in England, they've got these records, which what I've taken, I've now pushed in front of the faces of historic admirer in Scotland. Sir Walter was a man of considerable importance in Scotland, holding the office of Justice of the Lothian and being constantly in attendance of the King. 1242, the heir of Sir Walter, as if he was dead, was apparently David Oliphant, one of the magnates of Scotland, who in 1244 returned as holding one fee in Northamptonshire. So basically, this is a family who are still active and busy in England. And that is what has given us the proof, the evidence, that the Murrays did not inherit. Because later on they did, but not for a long time. I mean, not until Walter de Murray, apparently one of his heirs, David's heirs, presented to the church of Lilford. Basically, in about 1266, the Murrays just didn't own any of the English Oliphant properties. And if David was to have inherited the English properties, then why wouldn't he have inherited the Scottish properties too? Let's read on, please. That was Lilford. This is Oakington, also in England. Same thing again. His son and heir, David Oliphant, Lord by 1244, died without issue, probably before 1250. Actually, I think it's 1252, I put that in. Oakington remained for her life with his widow, Dibble Giller, who occupied it until the 1290s when she died. 1279, the whole Oliphant domain, or demesne, they held it. You could either hold land from the king, in which case you were kind of the overlord, or you held it from some big magnate who owned vast swathes of the country. And that's what the Oliphants did. The heir was Murray, son of David's sister, or husband to David's daughter. Again, I put that in. And the reason I put that in is because Gordon MacGregor, who is probably the foremost genealogist that Scotland has ever had, has looked at it all and reckons that it was actually David's daughter rather than his sister who inherited. Right, and on. There's even another fourth justiciar, as mentioned, William Oliphant, and this is a transcript of the charter in which he's mentioned Wilhelmo Oliphant Justiciario Lodoni, and the date of, it's Anthea, or Richard. Tertissimo Tertio. What does that mean? 33rd year? I mean, is tertio? My Latin's not wonderful, but I think probably I don't know. But it's a certain year in the reign of the king. Okay, the year of the reign of the king, whatever it is, which
Latin,
is
not French.
Yeah, it's Latin, but unfortunately, Latin's like Italian. Sorry, which is equivalent to 1247. Okay. Right. There appears to be no corroborative evidence to suggest that Sir Walter de Murray was ensconced in Bothwell before sometime around 1250, 1253. In fact, there is evidence to show that Sir David Oliphant inherited Sir Walter Oliphant's other estates and lived until circa 1252. That being the case, it is more plausible that the Oliphants Murray conceived and started Bothwell. Sir Walter de Murray, Petty and Bothwell, succeeded his father. This again is lifted off the website. No, it's from Gordon MacGregor. But basically, cut a long story short, March 1253, Sir Walter de Murray is asking for the church, he's giving money to the church for masses to be celebrated annually for Sir David Oliphant and their ancestors. So how come he didn't put Sir Walter Oliphant, who the authorities say he inherited from? Why wouldn't he put his father-in-law in there? because he inherited from David. Yeah? And in 1253, so basically he didn't have it much before 1253. I mean, I've put this in front of historic Scotland now, so you know, we'll see what comes from it. The Murray does not appear in any records relating to Bothwell prior to 1253. Also points strongly to that being the time when he comes into ownership of Bothwell. Further, even odder if Sir Walter de Murray was having the soul of Sir David prayed for, and not the soul of his father-in-law, unless David was his father-in-law. For instance, William Oliphant IV, and last Justiciar is not mentioned by de Murray, nor is the second Sir Walter Oliphant, but David is. This act by Sir Walter de Murray in 1253 is shortly after Sir David's is thought to have died in 1252. There is, however, another twist, and that is that basically there is, it's weird because we keep stumbling over a connection with a massively important family from France. And it was actually Zan again who found this. And in fact, Brandt and Cullen and Bob will know that I was asking for the DNA to be compared for different families. Beck, I can't remember the other names, but you will remember me asking a couple of weeks ago. And the reason was that Zan had said that his DNA compared with these other families, which are supposed to be this other French family, which is crazy. I mean, well, it's proof, if anything, but we haven't been able to research it. We can't find out what information that Zan had. Anyway, keep on going. Who built Chepstow Castle, though the latter was modified in the mid-13th century? Chepstow Castle was built by William Fitzosborne, and yet Bothwell Castle is very similar to it. If they were both built by one family, then it would explain why. This is Chepstow Castle, one of many castles that Sir William Fitzosborne built. And this is it again. You know, you've got the actual architecture is vernacular, but you know, it's just there are too many similarities. You know, the fact that it's perched on a cliff. Yeah. Right. I think that's it, isn't it? No, we haven't undertaken. Oh, this is my correspondence with Historic Scotland. We haven't undertaken any research at Bothwell. We had hoped to, but didn't get the funding for it. And we remain satisfied that the earliest date of the castle is mid to late 13th century. Why? Because it fits the history that they were sticking to. I'm advised that there are avenues of investigation we could pursue, as they have in other places, including radiocarbon dating. And that's the message, the letter or email was from Michelle Moore. Okay, and then she sent a letter which they had previously sent to me in 2012, which is basically saying that W.D. Simpson, who lived in the 19th century, McGibbon and Ross in the 19th century, the Royal Commission on Ancient and Historic Monuments of Scotland, etc. She's just cited lots of people, not her, but somebody else, has just cited lots of people who have just been citing Victorians. Keep going, please. Additionally, I see you argue it would be illogical for the Murrays to copy Cousy, worthy of the builders of the Donjon, as married to Cousy, who would have been targeted of such flattery, was no longer in Scotland by the time of their possession. They say it may be useful to highlight that while Bothwell and Cousy do share many similarities, the former is far from being a direct copy of the latter. So what? It's you know, I mean, they're just saying, well, you know, this is the traditional history. Take it or leave it. You know, keep going, please. And that's the end of that letter. they haven't actually cited any science in the letter at all. And all that they've been doing is, one historian follows the other, and just they don't actually do their own research. They just repeat what other people have said, which was wrong. Radiocarbon dating is the only answer. If it can be proven that Bothwell was built by the Oliphants, then it would be the oldest surviving structure known to be built by the family. It would be the biggest and grandest castle to have been built by the Oliphants. And it started nearly 800 years ago. It would mean that the most famous building constructed by the Oliphants, it would be, sorry, the most famous building constructed by the Oliphants. And this is dated 13th July, a few days ago. Yeah? Firstly, apologies for the delayed response. Thank you for taking the time to send the information you have shared regarding Bothwell's construction and history. I passed it to my colleague in the Cultural Assets team, as I imagine it will interest him too. That's better than them saying that they're satisfied that with the Victorian history. Yeah? So, that's it. End of the slide. So, the point is that these talks outside, is it? Okay. So that's it. You can go to your beds now if you want to.
Find the paper.
Sign your lives away and then you can go. We need more lights than that. Maybe it is that side, isn't it? I think it's probably yes. I tell you what, you turn them on and I'll turn them off. Well done, thank you, Stephanie. Does that all make sense to everybody? Yes, questions.
How and when and why did we go from Oliphant to Oliphant?
I know.
Okay, that's a strange one. There were a number of Oliphants, or Oliphants, sorry, captured at Stirling Castle in 1304. And they were still in captivity by 1309, but by then